to another episode of Not D&D, which is brought to you by EN World Live, which is of course part of EN World, the leading tabletop news and review site. So I'm your host, Jessica, but much more excitingly, we have a guest with us this week, which I'm sure you're all here to meet. So Kaya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So we are here this week to talk about your game, Her Odyssey, which I was very excited to learn about because it was recommended to me by a previous guest on the stream, and also a few people on the internet that came and said, hey, why isn't this person a guest on your show? And I said, well, I should definitely ask them. But we'll be talking about Her Odyssey and the game. If you're watching live, thank you for joining us. Please put any questions you have in the chat and we'll happily answer them throughout the show. But before we get into talking about the game, I'd like to talk a little bit about you and get into your history with kind of tabletop role-playing games. So could you share kind of how you first got into games?
Sure. So I first got into TTRPGs via D&D, as I think many people do. There was a long period of time when I didn't actually have anybody to play with. It was just whenever my mom was shopping at the mall, I was sitting in Borders, in the TTRPG aisle, just reading the source books and imagining what it would be like. I managed to get a consistent friends group to start playing D&D with in high school and college. But interestingly enough, the first non-D&D TTRPG I played was a completely, I want to say homebrew, but it was a game that was well thought out and well designed, despite the fact that it was made up by somebody in my local friends group who was just running it for this one particular group of people. It was called Paradise Towers. It was a D100 system where the skills and abilities that you had to roll, you could make up whatever skills you wanted, but you had to justify why it was you were using that skill every time.
Okay.
And you would roll a D100 and add your skill to try to get above a certain target number. And at the end of each session, depending on what you had done that session, the DM would tell you which of your skills went up or whether you had gained any new skills. And this was, in fact, meant partially as a blind, because you would get skills called question mark, or skills called, just very mysterious names. And you wouldn't know what they would do, but the DM knew what they were doing. And it turned out it wove into the giant reveal that there were gods walking among people, and those were measuring your attunement to the gods. And so just looking at that system, it was such a free form and freeing system. There was no memorizing formulas or figuring out how your character leveled up, because all of that was given to you. And so it really let you place the emphasis on the role playing and trying to figure out what those mechanics even meant. And I think shortly after that, same group of friends, I was introduced to Dread. And again, Dread is just an absolutely fantastic game for aesthetics and storytelling and weaving the two of them together. For those who are unfamiliar with Dread, the central mechanic is a Jenga tower. And every time you are asked to do something that might be dangerous or the outcome is uncertain, you pull a block from the Jenga tower, and when the Jenga tower falls over, well, bad things happen. And so it sets up this really, really strong tension in a way that D&D, in the groups that I'd played with, never had. So sort of moving forward in time, I didn't really get into the wealth of indie RPGs until I found itch.io. just a few years ago, and there are so many games on there.
So many.
Yeah.
Amazing. So how did you go from somebody who just played games, and it seems like really kind of the narrative side of games is what really appealed to you and getting into the character, which seems evident when people know the games you make. How did you go from somebody that just played games and enjoyed them to being somebody who makes them and has them out there for people to try?
Well, I hadn't really considered, sort of becoming a game designer. At the time, I was on Twitter, sort of trying to gain more, sort of gain more followers and get out the word of a D&D actual play that I was in, called Curse of Strahd Twice Bitten. I was making friends and making, connections and learning about all of the amazing projects that other people in the TTRPG Twitter space were doing. And I happened to see an amazing creator, Lex, at Titanomachy RPG, I think, is their Twitter handle, talking about a lightweight SRD that they had just published called Caltrop Core. And
Aha.
their promise was, this is a very easy and approachable system that you can read through it and be a game designer by the end of the day. So I thought, I guess I'll give this a look. And I
Yeah.
downloaded it and I looked through it and I said, this is neat. I can't see myself using it. I'll just sort of put it to one side. And a few weeks later, while I was in the middle of a shower, the idea that became Her Odyssey just crashed into my mind, and I thought, like, I have to get this down somewhere on paper, and so I just dried myself off and went straight to the computer.
Amazing. I mean, that leads us in really nicely to talk about kind of her Odyssey, which is what we're here to talk about. So as you mentioned, it's a Caltrop Core game. Kind of Caltrop Core a little bit?
Yeah, Caltrop Core is a system that is based around the use of the D4, which is why it's called Caltrop Core. They are the deadliest dice to step on.
Yes.
And Caltrop Core uses the D4 basically as an oracle system. So whenever you have something where the outcome is in doubt, you roll a D4. And if it comes up as a 1, that is an absolute failure. You don't get what you want and things get a lot worse. A 2 is a partial failure. You don't get what you want, but things don't get worse. 3 is a partial success. You get what you want, but things get complicated. And 4 is an absolute success. You get what you want, and you might even get something more. And the heart of Caltrop Core is figuring out how many D4s to roll, because you don't have to roll just one. One way that you could absolutely use the system is you have stats. You might have body, mind, and spirit, and your body might be a 2, and that means whenever you do something body related, you roll 2d4 and you take the highest. Or it might, lend itself to the sort of game where you have tokens. You might earn tokens from roleplay, you might earn tokens from actions, and then every time you have to make a roll, you decide how many tokens you want to spend on this roll, and you roll that d4s, you take the highest. It's a very flexible and robust system.
And that's kind of the reason you decided to choose it, I assume, for the game. So yeah. And because I've seen there's lots of different games based on it. So you can, I mean, this game, Her Odyssey, is a solo journaling tabletop RPG, but I've seen people that don't have it as a solo game equally as well. So I think that speaks to the flexibility of it. So you kind of touched on earlier why you chose to use this for the game, I guess because it's so flexible and it promised to be so easy. Were there any other reasons, or was it just that I'd seen this and it fit the bill, so let's just get out there?
It sort of developed into its own thing in my mind. I had seen other games made with it. particularly the multiplayer ones. And I was trying to figure out how one would make a solo game when you're not rolling against other people or rolling against a DM. And the idea of rolling against a card value that you draw from a deck of cards occurred to me. And if your card values go from 1 to 13, then you can roll 3 d4s and that gets you up to 12, which gives you a value of 1 that you can always achieve, no matter how many dice you roll, and a value of 13 that you can never achieve, no matter how many dice you roll. And so this idea of, I can meld these two systems, and it just so happens that if I use 3d4s, then the numbers fit perfectly, and the underlying mechanics of the Caltrop Core systems with the, no but, yes and, are so flexible and, open for interpretation, that this just seemed like the perfect system to use.
Perfect. So speaking about Her Odyssey, could you give us an overview of what the game is? So I mentioned it's a solo journaling RPG, but for people that are new and just exploring this, how would you introduce it to them?
Yeah, so Her Odyssey is a game that you play by writing journal entries about a wanderer who is trying to return home or find a new home. And so since it's a solo journaling RPG, you sort of come up with what your character is doing and who they are at the same time as you are coming up with the world they're traveling through, the environment they're encountering, any challenges they might be facing. And that sort of back and forth is the backbone of the game. So you have a deck of standard playing cards. You have to include the jokers, and you use a handful of d4s. You answer a few questions just to set up the basic sketch of who your wanderer is. And you don't even have to completely figure out yet what their lost home is like or what they are looking for. That's one of the things that you can discover as you go, just as your wanderer is discovering what they want as they go. And so every day you draw a card from the deck, and the suit of the card that you draw determines the sort of challenge that your wanderer might be facing. Each suit has a list of 9 different options, just to provide some variety. And the value of the card is basically emblematic of how difficult that challenge is. So you have 3 stats.
Yeah. So it's vitality, quickness, and fortitude.
Right. And
I'm cheating. I've got it just to the side of my screen, the PDF. So
I do as well, but it wasn't on that screen at that moment.
Yeah.
And you assign stat points to those 3 stats, symbolizing how good your wanderer is at those particular attributes at the beginning of the game.
Sure.
So you face the day's challenge, you choose 1 or more stats to try to meet that challenge. You roll the corresponding dice. You determine from what comes up on the die face how well any particular one of your attempts goes towards trying to face that challenge. And then you also look at the sum of all of these stats that you have rolled, and you see whether that has met or surpassed the face value of the card that you drew. And that determines whether the day has been auspicious or inauspicious. And you keep a count of how many auspicious or inauspicious days you have encountered so far, because that is important for the second half of your journey. When you draw your first joker, that is basically the midpoint of your journey, maybe not in terms of time, but in terms of sort of your character's narrative arc. That is the false homecoming, where your wanderer believes that she has found a suitable home, but something comes up to cause her to have to move on. And I use the pronoun her because
Mm-hmm.
by default, the pronouns for the wanderer in the PDF are she, her, but anybody who's playing can give their wanderer whatever pronouns they want.
Sure.
So the false homecoming causes your wanderer to sort of reflect on what she has seen so far, on why this particular uh, place that might have felt like a home doesn't suit, and sort of refocuses what she is actually looking for. And then you continue going with the daily card draw and the rolling the d4s to meet the challenge. However, as you go on in this sort of second half of your arc, the number of auspicious and inauspicious days you encountered in the first half of your arc may give you extra boons or drawbacks, depending on
Okay.
the variation that you're playing with.
Okay.
So then it becomes a little bit of a race against time to draw the second Joker, which is the true homecoming and is the sort of happily ever after for your wander, or sometimes
Mm-hmm.
bittersweetly ever after.
But the end of the story and the end of the journaling, nevertheless.
Yes, the
Okay.
end of the wandering, the end of the Odyssey.
Excellent. I love this concept so much. I think immediately. So I'm kind of new to solo journaling tabletop RPGs, and for me, I found it kind of a little bit intimidating because it was so different from what I'm used to. But this game, I see a real kind of purpose to it, if that makes sense. Like I think you mentioned as well that you can use it to build a world. So you could use this to explore and create a world for a campaign of a different game that you're playing, or you could use it to build a character backstory and just fill in those details before you're going to another game. So I thought that was so interesting. Could you talk a little bit about the ways you found different people used it during playtesting or when you were testing the game?
Yeah, the amount of creativity that my playtesters and the other people who have posted their play logs since then, the amount of sheer creativity they've brought to the game has been absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I kept my prompts, open-ended as much as I could without, having them be insubstantial.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that people interpret the provided prompts very differently.
Mm-hmm.
So one playtester ended up writing about a a city that was built upon gears, and the gears turned and interlocked, and
Hmm.
that ended up being a very interesting sort of beginning of a world building exercise beyond just
Sure.
discovering this particular character.
Mm-hmm.
Another player, Michael Schofield, uh, who is the creator of the podcasts The Thief and The Friar,
Mm-hmm.
decided to explore a different aspect of this world that he had already built for those podcasts by following the story of a spy who had just fled from the queen that she served with
Mm-hmm.
valuable state secrets, and figured out how somebody in this different corner of this world that he had built would be encountering difficulties and things like that. I know that there's one Israeli streamer who ended up playing on stream with his viewers, contributing ideas, and they ended up building this amazing world with like ancient robots locked in an endless war in the middle of a desert.
Wow.
Something that I never would have thought of going into this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, a lot of people end up bringing the worlds that they create into something else that they want to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I know that at least some people have used this as a tool to generate a backstory for a mysterious TTRPG character they were already playing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
and, yeah, just looking at the comment that is currently on stream. Thank you, Randall.
Sorry, I think my internet cut out a little bit there. Am I back?
Yes.
I apologize. The joys of going live. So you were saying people help me kind of create backstory and use it kind of in that way as well. Sorry. But yeah, so with the cover of the game, so the cover we're looking at here does look like quite traditionally fantasy and kind of exploring, but I guess this can be used for any setting. Like you could set this in space if you wanted to, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wonderful.
Again, the prompts are as open-ended without being generic as I could get them. So I have things like a key that could be a physical key in a fantasy setting. It could be a key code in a sci-fi setting. It could be some sort of secret in, let's say, Renaissance secrets and politics sort of game. For another example, a malfunction. That could be in a fantasy setting, your satchel splitting open all of a sudden. In a sci-fi setting, it could be, some sort of terrible technological malfunction.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good that they're so open, like you say, and kind of broad to let you kind of explore it. Because I think that's the fun of this kind of game, is letting your imagination go wherever you want to go. And also because it's a solo game, I think sometimes people feel a little bit freer to do more crazy ideas, because you can feel a bit intimidated at a table to put an idea out there if you're not sure how everyone else is going to take it. What's kind of the appeal for you for solo kind of journaling games or solo tabletop RPGs? Like, how would you introduce somebody that's kind of new to it or recommend it to them?
Some people recommend them as basically, if you can't get a group together for your regularly scheduled group TTRPG, if you're battling the scheduling demons all the time, then here's this way that you can still get your TTRPG fix. I would say that for sort of my games in particular, if you want to scratch that creative writing itch, but you don't want to stare at a blank piece of paper, just being frustrated at not being able to come up with anything, this is also a fantastic way to generate prompts that are just restrictive enough to give you a direction to start going in, but are also not putting any sort of preformed assumptions before you that you can't change to make the game exactly the way that you want.
That sounds really great. One thing I was just thinking of is my schedule's calming down a little bit, because January, with the open gaming license, not to bring it up again, was a little bit hectic being a small publisher. But now things have calmed down and I have a little bit more time. I was planning on sitting down to play a game of Her Odyssey, but I have never played a solo journaling tabletop RPG before, so this was my first one. So what guidance would you have for me, or for any newbies playing specifically Her Odyssey?
I would say that the rules text says that you can either play in one sitting, or you can draw a card each morning, think about what's going on, and write your journal entry in the evening, and sort of spread out the play over a period of time. I strongly recommend, if you're new to this, doing that latter option. The playing just a little bit every day, because
Okay.
it makes it a lot more approachable. You're
Mhm.
not blocking out 5 or 6 hours to try to wrestle with this game that you've never
Mhm.
played before. It's, much smaller chunks. And I would also say, if you have parts of an idea for a world already, absolutely bring those in. Um, Go in with, you know, any sort of idea that hasn't fit into other settings or any other projects. If you have an idea that you are excited about exploring, go for it. You do not have to play this with a blank slate.
That's really good to hear. So if people have listened to you kind of talking about the game and they're like, yes, I'm on board, where do I get my hands on a copy of this game? Where's the best place for them to go?
That would be my itch page at mirror-lock.itch.io. Her Odyssey is featured there. And you can also go straight to the link that's on screen currently, mirror-lock.itch.io/her-odyssey.
Awesome. And is it just PDFs or physical copies? And what sort of price are people paying for the game?
So this is very exciting for me to officially announce.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, her Odyssey is available in PDF form, both as a sort of full color version and as a printer-friendly black and white only version, for pay what you want. You can get it for free.
Mm-hmm.
You can um, give me money if you want. The default suggested price is $5, but whatever you can afford and feel comfortable paying.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am also partnering with Knave of Cups to produce a printed version. And they are doing all new layout, all new original art. This image that's currently on screen is
Mm-hmm.
a sort of draft image for what the front and back cover might look like. And I am, just absolutely thrilled to be working with AO and Jen in order to bring this to physical life.
Yes, I'm excited to get a physical copy because I think when you find a game you really like, even though, of course you can play from the PDF and get everything you want from that, but it's nice to just sometimes have a physical thing on your shelf, like of a thing that you like and is important to you. So I think that's lovely as well. What sort of, if people are wanting to get a physical copy, when would that sort of be available? Is that the later part of this year, or is that still in flux?
So the currently projected date is early April.
Mhm. Oh wow, that's pretty soon.
Yeah, this has been in the works for a couple of months now, but um, we've been sort of keeping it under wraps until it's ready to reveal. But I've also been sort of giving my friends and family little peeks. So this
Lovely.
is likely not huge news to any people who know me who might be in the comments right now. But I'm excited all the same.
Well, I'm excited as well. And where's the best place to get updates on when it's available and where we can get it and things like that?
Probably my Twitter or the Knave
Mhm.
of Cups Twitter. My Twitter is at mirror_lock. The
Mhm.
Knave of Cups Twitter, I think, is just Knave of Cups. Let me double check that.
Yeah, I can have a look and check that there.
Knave_of_cups.
That's great. Fantastic. And we'll put that in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. So all the links will be there. So you don't have to type that out. You can just click the links in there. But yeah, so that's fantastic. So I'm so excited it's coming to a physical print version. So I've already got the PDF, but I'll be looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of the physical book as well. So her Odyssey is not the only game that you've kind of made. Are there any other games that you'd like to kind of talk about and share while we're here today?
Well, I have a number of other games, so I'll
Yes.
try not to talk about them, in too extensive detail.
Mhm.
My other solo journaling games are Galatea, which is a wretched and alone solo journaling game about being a masterpiece that has come to life and trying to deal with the pressure of living up to the expectations of being perfect.
Wow.
It is not a happy game. Um,
No.
I sort of wrote it as an allegory for being, labeled as a gifted kid and then growing up and sort of stumbling against what the real world is like.
Mhm.
So, all my burned out former gifted kids out there, if you want to cry for a while, this is the game for you.
Wow.
Um, and my most recent my most recently published game, Untitled Moth Game,
Mhm.
written as in part as a birthday present for Cassie Mothwind, who I think is still in chat right now.
Oh.
It is a fairy tale flavored game
Mhm.
that follows the story of a cursed weremoth maiden who has been separated from her true love and has to go rescue them. So there's a stage where you explore a village and learn the villagers' stories. You can pledge to help them overcome whatever difficulties they're facing.
Mhm.
And then you get whisked away to the castle that you have to explore by turning over cards. And you also have to manage your resources. It is based on both the Breathless and the Carta systems, in addition to an SRD that I'm writing that I have not yet officially announced. Um, so, yeah, that is probably also not a happily ever after story. The prospect of rescuing your character's true love and having a
Mhm.
happily ever after, it is possible. However, it
Mhm.
is also very, very possible to run out of hope or run out of resources partway through, and have to deal with the feeling of letting down the people that you had promised to help. Um, so that,
Another happy game.
yes,
This
uh,
is your genre.
it is
I
my genre.
I love this type of game as well, so I'm fully in. So yeah,
Mhm.
love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We
Uh,
have had a quick question about kind of her Odyssey, about retail copies. So if there are some retailers that would like to get print versions of your game, what's the best way for them to ask you and get in touch about that?
you should message Knave of Cups, again, at knave_of_cups at Twitter.
Mhm.
I believe they also have a contact form on their website. They are handling all of the printing and distribution. I'm not sure whether they are planning to distribute to other stores, but they are absolutely lovely people, and I'm sure would love to have a conversation with you about that.
Fab, there you go. I just thought as someone asked and you're right here, I will ask. So chat to Naval Cups about that. But sorry, were you wanting to talk about any of your other games before I
Yes.
interrupted you? Sure.
Um, the single so far two-player game that I have
Ooh.
is called Pearl and Provenance, and you play as demigods fleeing some unspecified disaster from your former world and
Mhm.
having to world build from scratch. So it is very much a world building and myth making game,
Ah,
where you literally place land tiles on a hex grid,
all right,
and
okay.
also create new life forms, create myths, pick up new domains as your sort of divine um, portfolio. And as far as I can tell, eventually all of the games that I've seen in playtesting or in live play so far end up with one of the demigods trying to kill the other. So
Oh,
if
what?
that's the sort of mythology you're into, there you go. Um,
What? Why do they kill each other? Sorry, I don't know if I'm being very naive in my questioning, but I didn't think that was what you were going to say.
It usually ends up being, and this is very true to the sort of myths that that this draws inspiration from. It usually comes down to one of the gods making a new life form, and the other god giving them sentience, which also gives them the right to sort of talk about how this race views that god as their patron and creator, and the first god gets jealous, and every myth that you can think of where the gods get jealous of their creations and kind of push and shove each other in revenge. All those instincts come out apparently when people play this game.
That's so interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. I see it now you said it, but when you said it, I was like, what? Okay. I guess this is another game that's also great for maybe using before you're doing a campaign to sit down and create your world together and making the creation of the game and your world a game in itself. And I guess whichever god survives gets to be the GM, maybe, apparently. or, or something like that. But yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. But speaking of kind of other games, so thank you so much for coming on and sharing kind of your games with us as well. I always ask if you have any recommendations for other indie tabletop RPGs, and the rules are it can't be obviously D&D, and it can't be a game that you've made yourself. So do you have any recommendations for other games that people might want to use your games to kind of world build or create characters to play with, and then use a just different system for a bigger campaign maybe?
Yes, I am going to plug 3 games,
Sure.
and the first one is going to be the game that got me into solo journaling RPGs. It's called The Queen Returns by James Chip, and it is a solo sort of storytelling, half letter writing game about somebody in a kingdom where the queen has left or gone missing or something. And you play as this person who keeps writing letters to the absent queen, trying to keep her up to date on what's happening at home and hoping that she comes back. I played that as half of a letter writing game that I played with a friend of mine. We each picked up one solo journaling RPG and just sort of mashed them together so that we were writing to each other rather than keeping a journal. I would also like to talk about Paramore by Ren Goddary, which is another Wretched and Alone game, which really heavily influenced my approach to writing Galatea. It is a game about having a sort of dream lover, literally somebody you only ever see in dreams, and how that sort of creeps into your daily waking life. So a paranormal and parasocial romance.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And finally, just as an example of what solo journaling games can be if you push them to the limits of the genre, the Sticker Game by Cassie Mothwin is a game that you play by listening to the recorded audio tracks of the game and following the instructions and putting stickers into a notebook. You do have to do a little bit of writing, but mostly it's a way to express yourself using all of those stickers that you absolutely have and have not been using to generate a very, I'm going to say, whimsical experience.
Yeah.
So that can be found on Cassie's website at cassiemothwin.com.
Excellent. And they're in the chat saying thank you very much for the plug. So that's excellent. Thank you so much for your time and coming on and sharing your games with us and giving this brilliant recommendations as well. I'll go check them out. Maybe I'll invite them on the show as well so they can come and plug their show here. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to kind of say, or any questions I forgot to ask you that you want to kind of put in before we wrap up.
I'm just going to leave off with a very mysterious hint, which is to say that soon the PDF version of Her Odyssey is going to have a new cover where it's not going to say just a Caltrop Core game.
Oh. Well, there's a little hint for people to ponder upon. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much to everyone that has been watching live and everyone that has been listening. If you go onto the website there, mirror-lock.itch.io, links are in the show note or in the chat. Because the best way to support indie tabletop RPG creators is to buy their things. So thank you very much for listening. And thank you again for coming on the show. And that's all for this week. Thank you very much.